Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to do a review of one of the few Areej Le Dore Russian Atom fragrance creations that I have had in my collection and I have not done a full review on. So this is actually the most reviewed house on my channel now. I actually looked, I've done 35 videos from the house of Areej Le Dore, which is unbelievable. I had a lot of people writing and saying, hey, I'm surprised you haven't been talking about the new Classics collection, which Areej is going to be putting out. The pre-order time is basically dropping August the 19th, so it's coming up very soon. Today is actually the 17th, so in a couple days, August 19th of 2023, you can try to order there's 5 fragrances that are coming out. One is Russian Oud, which I have a video on, Chinese Oud, which I have a video on, Ottoman Empire, which I have a video on, Siberian Musk, which I have a video on, and the one that I actually really would have loved to get, I'd love to get them all, actually. There's 2, really. I don't own a full bottle of Ottoman Empire, so that would have been good to have. And I don't own a bottle of Walima. So Walima is actually the most expensive fragrance in the entire re-release, the Classics re-release. I've never smelled it. It's one of the few Areej Le Dore fragrances I've never smelled. I've never smelled Walima. I've never smelled Koh-i Noir and a couple others. But so anyways, they said, hey, I'm surprised you haven't been mentioning this on the channel. And the reality is I can't buy anything right now anyway, so my hands are a little tied. I would love to get a bottle of Walima. If I could, I probably would have tried to buy Walima and maybe even Ottoman Empire. But I can't, so it's a moot point. But I did want to review. Today we are going to do a review of this little bad boy, which is probably one of the best natural musk fragrances that leans more to the powdery side. So for me, there's a couple ways natural musk can come across. One is very leathery, tincturing like the outside of the musk pod, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then also the tincturing the inside of the musk pod, the musk grains, and giving the fragrance more of a powdery, softer, that sort of feel. Not as leathery and animalic like the skin of the musk pod, but sort of more of the inside of the pod itself. And we'll talk a little bit about how it smells and all that stuff, but this is called Musk Lave. And Musk Lave comes in a beautiful presentation. You can see I don't have very much of this bottle left because I actually purchased a partial from a friend. So this comes from Eddie. I've given this probably 2 or 3 good wears now. I can't remember exactly how many, but you can see enough for me still to wear and enjoy it. But I love the presentation. I usually don't care about the presentations, but the calligraphy on the cap, and oh, it's brilliant. And so there's the note listing. So we'll go through the notes here. Extrait de Parfum, 30 ml, came out in 2020. And top notes of bergamot and lavender oil from 1920. So an ancient bergamot oil, but it still sort of has a little bit of that freshness to it, but it also smells a little different. And we'll talk a little bit about how the bergamot feels in this perfume. Lavender Absolute in the heart from 1915 to 1920. So again, vintage lavender absolute. Osmanthus, aged Mysore sandalwood, which is absolutely stunning in this fragrance. And natural wild Siberian deer musk. Now, there is something that I want to discuss, and that's the natural wild Siberian deer musk. So one thing that you guys should understand is there are some people that refuse to buy any products that have any natural animal products in it, right? So if there's ambergris, which doesn't hurt the whale, it's not like they're killing the whales to get to the ambergris. The ambergris has to sort of float in the ocean and soak up all the rays of sun and the oceanic water before it turns into the most prized ambergris for perfumery, which is white ambergris. So, but if there's ambergris or real deer musk, there are some people that just will not buy it at all. And one thing you should know about the natural deer musk that's being used, you notice it's Siberian deer musk. And Siberian deer musk is the only place left on Earth. The Russian government allows a certain amount of hunters who live there on the land to cultivate the deer. Basically, think about the Indians that used to live on the American plains, how they would kill the buffalo and they would use it for everything. They would use the skin to make teepees. They would use the bones for jewelry. They would eat it, of course, for meat and all the things that they used the buffalo for. They used every part of the buffalo in something, right? And it's very similar to the people living in Siberia, except for the deer musk pods that are, when they end up killing one of these Kashmiri deers, they will sell it. They'll sell it for money. And because there's a constant supply and it's regulated by the government, I would recommend only buying real musk fragrances from houses that do it the legitimate way, who do it the ethical way. There is obviously a black market for something like this, but I think the Russian government sort of allowing a certain amount of tags, certain amount of deer to be, and only the male deer have the musk pod, so a certain amount of deer to be harvested every single year sort of keeps I think it keeps the prices stable, because otherwise you would have vast swings. You'd have these, black market prices of plenty and then none. And, prices would spike and go down. So this sort of keeps everything a little more economical, I think. So that's something to mention. This is a legally sourced deer musk, even though it is real deer musk. And that is the selling point of this fragrance. You'll notice there's no oud, right? So one of Russian Adam's biggest, I would say, one of the things that he really gave to Fragcom, right? One of, not just Fragcom, but the fragrance industry as a whole, is he wanted to show everybody what real musk, real oud, real ambergris smells like, because we're losing it. We're sort of losing, when you smell some of these fragrances from some of these designer houses and they say there's musk in there, you're not smelling musk. You're not smelling real musk. You're smelling some sort of white musk or black musk, or I've seen it all. I've seen purple musk. They list everything nowadays, and there's a name for everything, and it's all synthetic for the most part. And so just getting to smell a real natural deer musk fragrance is a gift. It's truly like a blessing nowadays. It's a gift, because I was actually doing a live stream with Russian Adam, and this was the last one we did, actually. And I was asking him, we've done like 4 or 5 of them now. It's been a lot. But I was asking him, I said, of all of the ingredients that you want to bring to the world, which is the one you're most concerned about as far as, generations in the future getting to know and wear and appreciate? And he said musk. Musk is the biggest concern for him, because oud, there can be plantation oud, and yes, it may not be 100 or 200-year-old centennial grandmother trees or whatever it is, but it's still quality oud. You can still sort of grow it and cultivate it and all that stuff. But with musk, that's probably the most endangered on earth, because it's banned everywhere. Basically, it's banned everywhere except for one country. Legally, that is. Of course, you could also find like vintage musk collections, but then you get into a lot of different factors that could change the smell. So let's talk a little bit about the fragrance itself, right? And my all-time favorite musk fragrances, like I said, I hinted at it a little bit at the beginning, but one thing you should know about this fragrance is that my 2 favorite musk fragrances of all time are, I actually did a top 10 real musk fragrance video if you want to check that out. But one is Siberian musk, which I do not have a bottle of. I'd love a bottle of Siberian musk, but I do have a pretty big decant that I've been sort of working on, and I've got a review on that. You can check it out. And the other one is this. This is Inverno Russo. This is, just these 2, oh man. But these are animalic, challenging musk fragrances, because the outside of the pod was actually tinctured, the skin. And the skin adds this sort of leathery, animalic, it almost smells like you're smelling castoreum. There's this leathery, slightly petroleum vibe that comes out in the skin. And that's my favorite type of musk. Now, so between Siberian musk and Inverno Russo, those are the 2 Russian Adam did that I think sort of lean more towards that animalic, leathery side. This is the opposite. So this is not my favorite type of musk fragrance, okay? I'll tell you that right out of the gate. It's not my favorite type of musk perfume. If I was going to build a musk fragrance for me to my taste, it would be more of the animalic side, like Inverno Russo or Siberian musk. That's the first thing out of the gate. However, there are 2 fragrances that Russian Adam created that I think lean more towards sort of showing off the powdery aspect, sort of the inner part, the musk pod, if you will, the grains on the inside of the musk pod. And one of them is Russian musk, which I will review one day very soon. This is the other Areej I don't think I've done a full review on, and I'm very blessed to have this bottle. Thank you, Hari, by the way, for finding this for me earlier in the year. Man, very good fragrance. And the other one is this, the one we're talking about today, Musk Lave. So these 2 are sort of Russian Adam's attempt to do musk, but not in the leathery animalic side of things, more to the powdery side. So, like I said, Adam explained to me that there's a lot of different factors that go into what you're smelling when you're smelling musk. There's also different types of musk. There's probably 8 different types of musk that I think people who are really in the know would really categorize. And I'm not going to sit here and claim that I'm a musk expert or anything, because I'm not. But what I will say is that if you're interested in learning more, go watch some of my live streams with Russian Adam. He goes into sort of the many factors that come into play when you're dealing with real musk, because one of the advantages that, you know, companies like Louis Vuitton, or, you know, I mean, pick a modern fragrance company, Dior, who's used, you know, some of these companies who are just using the generic synthetic musks that are out there from the big oil houses, is that when you're using a synthetic musk, everything is the same, right? You can make the same fragrance today, tomorrow, 10 years from tomorrow, and that's one of the things they absolutely love about synthetics. But with stuff like this, it's going to be different. The musk pods that you get, depending on how they were stored, for example. Was it frozen in a freezer or put into a refrigerator for decades? Was it deep frozen? You know, how old is it? Is it 5 years old? Is it 55 years old? All of that sort of plays a factor into what you're smelling when you're smelling these real musk fragrances. Did the perfumer use only the musk pod grains, or did they also use sort of the, you know, the powdery soft musk pod grains, or did they use the skin to tincture it to make it more animalic and leathery? And so in Musk Lave, one thing that I want to say is I don't want to give the impression that this is all clean musks, because it's not. So for me, you know, instead of sort of tincturing the skin and giving it this leathery animalic vibe, they decided to stay with the imagery of sort of this powdery inside of the pod. Imagine it. You can actually look it up. Look up musk deer pods, if you will. And what you'll find is that many of the wild Siberian deer musk pods are not necessarily clean on the inside. There's all sort of stuff that goes around the pod itself. So you'll see like hairs and like imagine like deer hair actually shoved into the musk pod, right? There is different types of musk, like there's Kashmiri musk, where you don't find those hairs on the inside. It's almost like a completely different inside when it's cut open. But for the wild Siberian deer musk that's being used, imagine sort of looking at that musk pod and finding like bits and, you know, pieces of dirt, earthiness, and also sort of this hair from the deer itself shoved into the musk pod. And that's sort of a very good image of how the musk in Musk Lave smells, because I don't want to give the impression that it's necessarily clean, because it's not clean per se, but what it is there is a level of cleanliness to the fragrance. It's almost like a dichotomy between this, you know, barbershop lavender thing going on that adds a little bit of this old school masculine cleanliness, soapy, cotton ball-y cleanliness, mixed with that musk. And the musk is there from the very beginning, from the moment you spray. I've got about a 3-hour dry down here and about a 8.5-hour dry down here. And from the moment you spray, you will pick up that musk note. It is one of the stars of the show, if you will. So let's talk a little bit about. So it does have a little bit of that vintage, dirty feel to it. It's not all clean musks, okay? But sort of the powdery aspect of it is the side of the musk that's really being portrayed here. And now, what you get when you first spray, interestingly enough, is you get this vintage bergamot oil. And they said it's actually from 1920. The bergamot oil is from 1920. I don't know how you store an oil for that long and have it keep all of its properties. But one thing that I will say is for the first couple hours, the bergamot oil, to my nose anyways, gives off this very boozy vibe. It's a little bit of a strange deal. Imagine a boozy bergamot, right? Along with the lavender in the opening, you sort of get this boozy bergamot. And I don't know whether that comes from the vintage vibe or whether it's just sort of a symptom of how everything is blended with the musk, but there is a strange sort of booziness to my nose that sort of comes to the forefront. And then, so you have to remember that in this fragrance, this fragrance is all about smooth. So that's what I want you to sort of keep in your mind. Whenever you are imagining how Musk Lave smells, I want you to imagine that you're smelling something that's extremely smooth. Okay, so even though it's an extrait de parfum, it's sort of like this oriental fougere. All right, so I want you to imagine like an oriental style fougere, if you will, that has this unbelievable wild Siberian deer musk and this lavender oil absolute, if you will. But everything you smell in this fragrance is extremely smooth. There's hardly any rough edges except for the times when sometimes the musk and the labdanum in the base comes across as slightly smoky, and that boozy opening. The boozy opening is it's a little bit of a strange fragrance. Actually, the big time blogger Kafkask, who I really respect her nose, she said this was a very hard fragrance for her to sort of break down because it had these huge polarities to it. Sort of went over here and then it went over here. You know, the musk, which is slightly dirty, like I said, not completely clean, slightly dirty, set against this very clean, barbershoppy lavender feel. Almost like a little bit of a fougere. And I think the word oriental fougere is actually a really good breakdown for this. So, like I said, don't forget, there's a lot of factors that sort of affect the smell of real musk. How long was it aged? Is it kept in a container near sunlight? Are the musk pods moist, right? So I don't know what all of the ins and outs of the actual musk that we're smelling in this fragrance, how it was kept and all that stuff. I have no clue. But I can tell you that smelling real musk in any of these real musk fragrances we talked about, this one, Musk Lave, Russian musk, Inverno Russo, or Siberian musk. You can check out my video on Siberian musk if you're interested in that one. Any of them, smelling them is a gift, and it's almost like you're having an out-of-body experience. It really is. It like touches a part of your brain in that most perfumes do not touch. 99% of people, maybe 99.9% of people nowadays have never smelled real deer musk. It is like a delicacy, okay? And that's what Russian Adam brings with these type of fragrances. So the smell, so, you know, what they're smelling is they're smelling this synthetic sort of creation when they go to Macy's or whatever it is. It's completely different. Smelling real musk compared to white musk, and I actually like white musk. I like the synthetic deer musks that some of those houses created, but it's completely different. And nothing really compares to the, you know, glory and the grandeur of real deer musk. It's a for a fragrance connoisseur, it's really sort of a delicacy is the way that I view it. It's almost like a religious experience to smell something like this. It really is. It's almost like this extreme euphoria whenever you smell real deer musk. Even though this is not the way that I prefer my deer musk to be used, like I said, I much prefer the leathery animalic side of it. It's still almost like this out-of-body experience to smell real deer musk. And so even though, like I said, it's not my favorite, it's definitely something that I would recommend to, if you can get a chance to smell any of these real musk fragrances. Ensar also has some amazing real musk perfumes. EO number 2 is one I have a review on. You can check that out. But the beauty of the way Russian Adam created Musk Lave is it really highlights, it allows the musk to be perfectly spotlighted in this fragrance. And one thing I will say is many people who smelled the entire 6th collection, and I think the 6th collection included things like Agar de Noir, Cuir de Russie. Oh, that's another Areej Le Dore I've never smelled. Cuir de Russie. Grandinia I smelled, but I don't remember it. It's been a while. Actually, I might have smelled the 6th collection, all of the 6th collection, but I can't remember some of these. Santal Galore is one that I actually have a bottle of now, and that's probably my favorite from the entire 6th collection. But of the whole collection, I think this is the one that most people sort of, most people who, let's say, are not into crazy animalic fragrances like I am and some of you are, gravitated towards this. Because even though it's a real musk fragrance, even though it's showing you aspects of musk that you would never smell at your local department store, there's still something that's very, I would say, likable about the fragrance. There's still something that, you know, I think can grab the average person. There's nothing here that's going to just really I would wear this to work. I would have no problem wearing this to work. You know, there's this factor of musk that just sort of draws people to you, right? To me, this is a attractive fragrance. This is something where, you know, there are some fragrances where you wear it maybe the first hour or two, like you don't want to be around people because you know it's just like, you know, it's a repellent instead of a fragrance that sort of brings people in. This is one that from the very first spray, I think it really does bring people in. And I think that's why this is one of the more likable from the 6 collection. So the other thing I'll mention is because the musk is so prominent throughout the entire life of the perfume, and once that boozy opening starts to dissipate, I don't hear many people talking about the boozy opening. So maybe I'm not describing it very well, but it's the only thing that I can think of to sort of give you an idea. Imagine like a boozy bergamot opening, if you will. And so the boozy opening begins to fade as the hours tick by. And what you're going to notice is one of the most amazing Mysore sandalwood notes sort of come to the forefront. And that Mysore sandalwood is unbelievable. It's slightly floral. There's a little bit of this floral aspect to the Mysore sandalwood. It's milky and it's extremely smooth. Remember, silky smooth is the name of the game with Musk Lave. The whole fragrance is smooth, cool as the other side of the pillow. And once I think a lot of it has to do with the interplay between the sandalwood and the musk. Those are the 2 stars of the show for me. The real Mysore sandalwood and the interplay between the musk. And it gives off this very vintage vibe because of the way that it smells. To me, I could easily close my eyes and just imagine that this is a creation from the Guerlains in 100 years ago. Or Caron, or, you know, these old-timey French houses from 100 years ago when they were still using, even 100 years ago, some of them weren't using real musk, which is crazy to think about. But, you know, you go back to some of these older houses, Lanvin and stuff like that, lots of them were not using real musk even 100 years ago. So that's how rare it is to really get to enjoy and truly appreciate a proper musk fragrance. But there's a slightly floral, milky, sort of smooth sandalwood in this that blends beautifully with the musk. And it gives off this vintage vibe. However, whatever house you want to talk about from 100 plus years ago, that's sort of the way that it makes me feel. Very vintage vibe. Beautiful. Coty. Imagine Coty working on this. I could totally see that. So the fragrance is sort of musty, dusty, fusty, whatever you want to call it. And there is this almost mothball feel, almost like this enclosed feeling to it. There's no camphoraceous aspect to it, but there's this enclosed space, right? Imagine a closet with a bunch of mothballs in there, and it's been shut for a long, long time, right? And it has that musty feel. And then you get a little bit of that barbershop lavender. And the barbershop lavender, to me, so Kafkaesque on her blog says that the lavender comes across as being candied sweet. That's what she said. She said it's candied sweet on her skin. And to me, I don't really think that it's the lavender being candied sweet. I think it's the musk just giving off this sort of natural sweetness. And you guys know I despise sweet fragrances. I hate sweet fragrances. I have bashed sweet fragrances to the hilt on this channel. And this, even though there is a sweetness to it, it's not coming from these synthetic molecules. It doesn't bother me at all. Even though there is a generic sweetness, it smells natural because I think it's literally coming from the musk itself. I think the musk that you're smelling is what's giving it a little bit of that, you know, that resinous, sweet, whatever you want to call it. Maybe resinous would be a good word for that boozy opening that I was trying to describe earlier. But yeah, just imagine this, you know, imagine this sort of resinous, boozy opening with a little bit of sweetness underneath coming from the musk. And I think that's one of the reasons also why this is such a mass appealing fragrance from the 6 collection, in my opinion. So, she also mentions on her blog, interestingly enough, and I would go read that article if you're really interested in exploring Musk Lave any further, but she mentions that the lavender feels desiccated, okay? So imagine this like very dry sort of lavender mixed with the sweetness. She calls it like a nebulous, desiccated lavender. Very interesting descriptors. And so just imagine as the hours tick by, that sort of sharp, boozy, resinous feeling bergamot starts to sort of fade away. And what you're left with is this very soft, rounded fragrance. Even the bergamot, while you're smelling it, can smell slightly rounded and smooth. Everything in this fragrance is smooth. That's the key. If you're trying to imagine how this fragrance smells, it's an extremely smooth operator. And it really focuses on the powdery, powdery, velvety feeling of the smooth musk. Okay, everything is smooth. And that sort of powdery aspect, it really brings you back constantly to the fact that you are remembering, you are smelling real musk. And remember, musk is used as like an attractant to the female deer, right? So to me, there is something that is very territorial and sexualized and slightly animalic. Like I said, imagine that musk pod with hairs inside of it. It's not completely clean. Yes, it's a little bit powdery. It's a little bit sweet. Almost imagine like you're smelling the animal itself, right? The animal itself. Imagine you're like touching the fur of the deer, right? And it's slightly coarse, but it's also dirty from being in the wild. The deer isn't taking regular baths, right? There's something in the musk that is earthy and sweet and slightly sharp too. So when you smell it, even though it's like smooth, like I said, you get this sort of, this very distinctive musky smell in your nostrils that you're not used to smelling when you're smelling the synthetic musk. This cannot be recreated. The smell of real musk cannot be recreated, to me. It's almost like this grainy, soily, earthy, furry smell is really the best way to describe it. Imagine the deer is right there in front of you. It's not afraid of you. You go up and you pet it, and you're smelling sort of the soily earthiness of the ground. You're smelling the fur of the deer, and you're also smelling maybe some of the dirtiness that the deer was running through the bushes or rolling in the dirt or whatever they're doing. And so that unreal, natural musk note is the heart and soul of the fragrance. And it's mixed with that very creamy, milky, silky smooth Mysore sandalwood note. Those are the two stars of the show, and they play off of each other brilliantly. The entire time they play off of each other. And there is a very slight hint, just a slight hint of this sort of peachy osmanthus note. But I think more of the osmanthus comes across as this fleshy, floral depth to the fragrance. It adds heft. If you've ever smelled osmanthus and I love osmanthus. It's one of my favorite floral notes. It usually gives off this very leathery, almost suede-like, animalic, peachy, nectarine-like note. Here, you don't get any of the leathery aspect, or if you do, I'm not really picking much of it up. You don't get very much of the peach or nectarine. Maybe way in the background, there's a slight little bit of floral aspect, but this floral fruity aspect, but that could be coming from the musk. It's very hard to break the fragrance out because it is so well blended. But I think the osmanthus just gives this sort of fleshy, floral depth and heft to the fragrance is the way that I would describe it. And then, there's this creamy side to it as well. So I mentioned the powdery side, but also think about the creamy, fleshy side of osmanthus. And imagine like this creamy, milky side of sandalwood sort of coming together to support the musk brilliantly. That's the sort of supporting note. And then, contrast that to that lavender that I was mentioning earlier. That's sort of slightly barbershoppy, slightly clean, crisp, dry, desiccated, if you will, if you take Kafkaesque's words, lavender. Very beautiful fragrance. That sort of powdery, soft vibe is beautiful. Very hard to recreate. There is a little bit of oak moss in the base, apparently. I think there was oak moss listed. Yeah, there's iris accord, which I don't get very much traditional iris, I'll tell you that. Maybe it's just used to sort of blend everything together, but there's also oak moss and labdanum in the base. And the oak moss in the base, it also doesn't really feel like a proper oak. It's not the oak moss I know from the old school vintage fragrances. This is an oak moss that it doesn't really add this green textured feel as much as it sort of sets the mood. Like imagine you're smelling everything I mentioned earlier, but inside of like this hollowed out tree. So imagine the enclosed room that I was telling you about. Instead of being in a room, being inside of like a 200-year-old tree, and you're just standing inside of it like a hobbit, right? And you're enclosed though in the tree. And maybe you're not touching anything because it's not very textured. It just feels like you're sort of enclosed in this damp sort of area, if you will. Everything is shut, right? There's no air coming in and out. It's very, like I said earlier, musty. And so this sort of hollowed out tree. And inside of the tree, there's like a heater that's turned on. And so you're smelling everything that I mentioned earlier with all the musks and the lavender and the bergamot and the Mysore sandalwood and the osmanthus. And all of a sudden someone turns on a heater and there's this unbelievable warmth that just sort of wraps you up, right? That's what the musk in this fragrance does so beautifully, is it's like being hugged. It's like being grabbed and being warmed. It adds this unbelievable warmth. I once described musk as taking a pitcher of honey and pouring it over your head and just letting the honey flow all over you, but imagine it being musk, not honey. But imagine the texture of honey, how it's just sort of like slowly flowing over you. That's what the musk feels like. And any part of your body where it goes over is warmed. There's this warmth to it. But unlike ambery warmth, it's a little different because of that sort of powdery, slightly animalic, pissy side. There is a little bit of a pissy side to this musk. Oh, it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. So even though it's not my favorite musk, it's you know, everyone has a different perception of the fragrances that they love, right? And my favorites may not be your favorites. I've done a top 100, and there are people that I really respect in the community that say stuff I left off the list is actually their favorite fragrances, because it's all a subjective game that we're playing with fragrances. Everyone, you only smell with your own nose, right? But for me, even though this is not my favorite type of musk, I really enjoy getting to know it because it's such a treat to get to wear these type of fragrances. And I really think that is the value of Areej Le Dore, showing you sort of the notes that you'll never find at your department store. Even if you go for the most expensive fragrances, you're never going to find fragrances with real musk. You're hardly going to find fragrances with any proper amount of real oud. If it's there, it's usually just the tiniest bit just for the GCMS machine to say it's there, right? So they can legally say it's there. They're not actually putting enough to make a big difference because they're using all these other synthetic oud ingredients that you're really smelling. But you know, that and so that's what Areej Le Dore really brings to the table. The real ambergris, the real musk, the real oud. So musk lave, that's my take. If you've smelled musk lave, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. If you're going to buy some of the new classics collection that's going to be coming out, let me know which ones you're going to get. Be very interested to see which one, you know, people are most interested in trying out. I would love to grab one or two, but unfortunately I can't. But again, that's coming out on August the 19th. So congratulations, Adam, I'm sure it's going to be another amazing release. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.